truth was it? Because teachers say these things that they think they're just throwaway comments that now affect the kid for the rest of their life.
It did have baggage, but what she's really saying is you've done nothing in 4 years to deserve the right to go to college, and you're not going to make it.
So what happened when you got back? Did you become the American dream millionaire with this invention?
It was going to work in limited applications, and I was too hard-headed to hear that.
But you did build a successful company.
Oh, absolutely.
After
it wasn't after this, it was later on. And people ask, well, why didn't you tell them? Because you wanted it to be a secret, you wanted to surprise them? Well, I wish that were true. The truth was I was afraid I was going to break my promise, and I didn't want anybody to know about it. Didn't trust myself.
You're listening to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. I'm your host, Lori Saitz. This show exists because fine is a lie leaders tell themselves. And it costs them their people, their culture, and their impact. Every episode, a leader gets honest about what it really takes to lead with empathy, vulnerability, gratitude, and courage. I trust something in this conversation will stay with you. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Scott Lackey. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to be here, and I appreciate you having this conversation today.
Before I hit record, actually, when I first hopped on into the studio, Scott was already here and he was proofreading the author's copy?
The author proof. Yeah.
Author proof of his new book, which we will get to talking about later, but that's so exciting that you have this and that you're doing that.
It is a little bit of a surreal experience staring at your own words in your hand, you know.
And do you get as you're reading it, because sometimes this happens to me when I go back and read something like a post or an article that I wrote from a couple years ago, I'll be reading it and I'll be like, damn, this is really good.
You know, I mean this in a greatly humble way. I really do. There are some sentences that I've already reread in the first 3 chapters where I just had to close the book. And actually the feeling wasn't immediately, this is good. It was, wow, I really remember that moment, right? Because I've been away from this actually for a couple of months now, waiting on all this to get to this point. So yeah, coming back with a fresh set of eyes. I mean, again, I'm only in the first 3 chapters, so I've got a little while to go.
Yeah, we'll get more into talking about that in a moment. But yeah, it is kind of surreal sometimes to read your stuff and be like, wait, who wrote this? I feel like I channeled it.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, sometimes. Channeled it, and you can say, I'm not that good.
Well, obviously you are. Scott, what were I want to give my listeners some background on who you are. So what were the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming the human you are now?
I really love telling the story of my family because we were a very close-knit family. We did everything together, spent summers going to the lake every single year, almost every weekend. And we had community, at the lake that you grew up around. And so that whole family atmosphere was really the core of who I was growing up, right? Family. And I couldn't have asked for better parents and a great sister, to grow up with. Not that my sister and I got along when I was younger, but still. Well,
sure.
Right. But
Mom, he's on my side of the car.
Yeah. Trust me. All of that. Yeah, we all know. But no, that's how I would sum up my family life. I couldn't have asked for anything better from a family perspective. And then from a personal perspective, I was involved in the Boy Scouts. We lived out in the country. And, I had this freedom that I don't think really exist as much today, right? Where I could disappear when the sun came up. And the rule was be home before the sun sets. And it would really make me happy if you would at least check in around lunch. But that was impossible for me because I was so far away out in the woods. There's no way I'm coming home for lunch.
Okay.
And as a young boy, I was building forts. And I mean, things that wwere amazing, as a kid. But it was about adventure, about exploring. And that was my whole childhood. And actually, it is as much as a gift as it was, and as much as I actually carried things forward from that, it actually manifested itself in a way when I was in high school that caused me great difficulty in high school.
Well, you can't just leave that sitting there. Tell more.
Yeah, the great difficulty was is that when I was in high school, I didn't care about, it's probably the only time in my life I felt this way, that I literally did not care or think about tomorrow. I lived in the day. And when I mean, maybe I shouldn't say completely, but yes, I would think about the weekend coming up, right? But that was it, because the weekends were sacred to me, because that was when I got to go out on an adventure doing something. And, I had that whole Indiana Jones mindset, right? We're both old enough to know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
That was my mindset. And the reason it brought difficulty to me, because as I approached my graduation, I was not a good student, not because I wasn't capable, because I didn't care. And as I was approaching high school, there were three people in my life that, in a very short 2 week span of time, asked me questions that were innocent questions that are probably asked to people every day, but they turned me upside down. And it was my coach asking me one day out of the blue, if you're going to play basketball in college, I need to know. I'm like, college basketball? I mean, I just never thought about it. Now, I did have a teacher tell me that, you're not college material, and embarrassed me in front of my classmates, right? So, I mean, these things happen. But that, and by the way, I guess the hard part of her telling me that was, it was really the truth.
Whose truth was it? Because teachers say these things that they think they're just throwaway comments that now affect the kid for the rest of their life.
Well, and again, it did have baggage, but I write about this in my book, is that as much as it was inappropriate for her to say that, if you were to know me as a student, what she was really saying, and it didn't come out this way. What she's really saying is you've done nothing in 4 years to deserve the right to go to college, and you're not going to make it. That's the truth. Okay. Doesn't mean I couldn't have limped through. Right. But again, that she said that. And of course I called my parents thinking that, hey, this is unacceptable. And I thought they were going to defend me. And it ended up in a family meeting when my dad got home from a business trip, which we didn't have. And I was given three choices by my dad. You're going to go to college, or go to college. You just let us know which one. And so moving from that life, that whole life of growing up being free and adventurous, to three people drawing a circle around me in the span of 2 weeks, honestly, it turned me upside down,
Because you hadn't considered going to college before that.
Zero.
Did your parents?
By the way, I was a really good basketball player, and I could have played in college, right? But I never thought about playing in college. I just enjoyed the moment, the time.
Yeah. Did your parents go to college?
No, actually, this was very important in our family that I go to college, to be the first in the family to graduate from college. And I did want to go to college. It wasn't that I didn't want to go, but I knew inside, if you go to college, there's going to be a continuation of what you're doing in high school, and you're not going to make it. I didn't have the discipline to make it.
So did you go?
No.
Okay.
What I did was, my dad gave me 2 weeks to make a decision on where I was going to go to college. And I was in absolute turmoil for 2 weeks, mental turmoil. And one night, sitting in my bedroom, or laying on the bed in my bedroom, looking at this little small TV I had, a United States Army commercial came on with tanks and helicopters and soldiers. And I don't know if you remember this commercial, but it was the best saying they've ever had in the history of recruiting, which was "be all you can be." And then in the United States Army is how it ended. And then it closed by saying, "We do more before 8 a.m. than most people do all day." And I sat up in bed, staring at the TV with the music playing, and I had this overwhelming feeling of peace, of that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
I mean, I knew it. I knew it. It was crazy. And I knew nothing about the Army. Now, my dad had served in South Korea and et cetera, but we never talked about that. So, a couple of days later, when the deadline was up, I sat in the same couch across from my parents. My dad said, "Okay, son, which college did you pick?" And I said, "Dad, I'm going in the Army." And I smiled, and there was just silence in the room. It was still. And my mom's head dropped. She started tearing up. My dad just stared at me, and he goes, "You know what, son? That's going to be good for you."
Mm-hmm.
And it was a life-changing, literally life-changing, course-altering, irreplaceable return course for me to go in the military. And 4 years later, after the military, after I did my tour in active duty, I was with the 1st Infantry Division for a while over in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, 2 years in Europe, had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful military, 4 years in the military, was served under some of the most amazing leaders in my entire life. So all of that was great. And then when I got back from the desert, that was when I started college. So I did 4 years of active duty and then 4 years of college, and I was in the National Guard in college.
Mhm.
So I ended up going, but I did it in reverse, of what most people do.
Well, I think that's something that we tell young people because we've been conditioned, our generation, that college is so important when one, I don't think everybody is cut out for college and it's not required for success in life. And the other thing is you weren't ready. You knew you weren't ready. And so you went and did the thing that would help you prepare to be ready.
No, you nailed it. That's why I said it was so transformational for me, right? And again, I enjoyed college. I didn't love college, but I enjoyed college. But it was difficult for me. And it was difficult for me because of all the things that I did in the military. I excelled in the military. I mean, when I say excelled, I'm talking 10 out of 10 excelled. Not that I loved everything about it, but I did.
Yeah.
And when I left the military and became a civilian again, none of those skills, I shouldn't say none, most of those skills did not resonate or translate to being a civilian.
Why didn't you stay in?
Well, I really did want to go to college. That's number one. And I'd promised my mom that I would go to college and get my degree. But the second reason, and this was the tipping point, when I was over in the desert in northern Kuwait off the Iraqi border, this is where I don't know if you remember, all the oil wells burning, and that was one of the areas where there were many of them. I actually created an invention when I was over in the desert, and it actually worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like this was the tipping point for me of exactly why I was supposed to go to college. Matter of fact, I was convinced I was going to be a millionaire. I was going to build a business around this invention because it worked. I made a crude model of it in the desert, and it worked. And so I didn't know how, I didn't know who, I didn't know where, I didn't know anything. All I knew is it worked, and I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to figure out how to build my business around this, and I'm going to live the American dream, and this is what I was destined to do. So those two things, a promise and an invention in the desert in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day, is what made me make the final decision of I'm going to re-enlist, and I'm going to get out and go to college and become a millionaire.
Are you going to tell us what the invention was?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the name of the product was called a wire dog, right? And it got its name because we were tasked. This was before the war started, actually. We were tasked, me and 6 other guys were tasked with laying some communication lines, miles and miles and miles of this stuff, right? Because we were up on the Iraqi border. Basically, the apparatus held a spool of communication line, and then it ran down a tube where there was a tool that was digging a trench as it was being pulled behind a vehicle. Okay, so the spool would unwind. The cable would go in the trench, and then we were dragging a chain behind it, and it would cover it up all at one time.
Okay.
So all I needed we needed a person to drive the truck, somebody to hold the spool, and I was standing on the unit because I was the weight, right? And it worked beautifully. I mean, we finished everything in hours instead of days.
Okay.
So that's why we called it the wire dog. And everybody hated that term, but I couldn't come up with anything different. And so I kept.
And so what happened when you got back? And did you become the American dream millionaire with this invention?
No, it was a disaster.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Not because, well, first of all, did it work? Yes. And again, I can say this in retrospect. It was going to work in limited applications. And I was too hard-headed to hear that. I think my dad was trying to tell me that, but I was too hard-headed to hear that because I wanted it to work so bad. I couldn't hear.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a key takeaway right here, is that sometimes we're so in love with what we have created that we don't hear anything. I don't want to say reality because I don't really love that term, but we're not willing to hear
alternatives.
Yes, thank you. We just want to see what we want to see.
See what you want to see. And I don't want to get off topic here, but this is one of the things I write about in my book is that, privately, alternatives are a gift privately. But people want to use alternatives as a weapon against you.
Say more about that.
Yeah. So when you start trying to change your life, there are going to be people in your circle that were never meant to go with you on that journey. And so when you start to move apart from them, this can be family, this can be friends, colleagues. When you start to move apart because you're on a journey, we're all on a different journey. And when you start down that path, there are going to people that are going to cling to that. I don't know what a word to use, but they're going to, where are you going? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Were you better than us now? Are you, I mean, just these things come out. And of course it puts a distaste in your mouth. Like, wait a minute, what are we talking about here? I'm trying to invent something. I am an inventor. I'm trying to build a business. And I mean, I had one of my friends tell me, I was trying to, matter of fact, he said something like that. And it took me aback, and I was trying to explain what I was trying to do. And I'll never forget him sitting on the couch, and he looks at me and he goes, I just want you to shut up about it.
Mm.
So the real truth came out. Now we were still friends, but it hurt me, broke my heart, right? But the real truth came out is that he wanted me to shut up about it because I was trying to do something that he'd never done, or
That's
wasn't
the
going to
thing.
do, or wasn't willing to do, or whatever
Right.
it was.
Right. And you were challenging his sense of self with your
100%.
sense of growth.
Yeah. So he was measuring again, I don't know what they were, but whatever inadequacies
Mm-hmm.
he was feeling, I was exposing those.
Yes.
That wasn't my intention. My
Right.
intention was to share,
Right.
but that wasn't how it was received. So that's what I mean when I say that.
Okay. Yeah. And that's another point of why it's so important that when you are doing something entrepreneurial, inventive, that you get yourself around other people who are doing that kind of thing, who will support you in what you're doing versus trying to pull you down or.
Well, not only support you, but also give you two things. I do want to say this to the audience. If you're going through something right now where you're trying to improve yourself, you better believe it for yourself, because you could be like me. This is why one of the main reasons why the invention didn't work is that while I believed it worked, I didn't know it then, but what I needed was everybody else's affirmation that it would work.
Yeah.
And when I didn't get it from anybody, then I began to doubt what I thought I believed in. And that snowballed into a train wreck, right? And the final train wreck, I just want to share this with you. The final train wreck was when I was ready to give up on it. I was working in a Dillard's department store in the men's section. And a gentleman came in the most perfect suit, right? The businessman I aspired to be. And we got to talking. And he asked, I don't remember what his first question was, but it was something about, what are you going to do after college? And I was so dejected by where I was in life at the moment in the Wire Dog. I just vomited everything. I'm a veteran. I've invented this and this is that. I just vomited, right? I didn't care.
Right.
And little did I know, after 45 minutes of talking, he reaches into his coat and pulls out a business card. And he was the president of one of the local big banks. He said, Scott, why don't you come by and see me? I'd like to learn more about this and you. And I did for days. Went and saw him, had lunch with him, got to know him. And this man, this would never happen today, but this man gave me a $7,000 loan with my signature and my honor to go fund my invention. Because right around the time I met him, there was another commercial that came on TV from a company called the National Idea Center. And they said, you remember that name?
Yes.
And they said, for a small investment, we specialize in helping people take their inventions to the next level and all this stuff. This all happened at the same time. And I thought, man, heaven is in alignment now, because I now have the money. I can now call these people. And I'd already talked to them a couple of times, and they told me it was going to be $10,000. I didn't have any money, So I took the $3,000 I had, right, which was everything, and the $7,000 from the bank, and gave it to the National Idea Center. And I don't remember if it was 6 or 8 months later, but maybe closer to 8 months later, the government announced and shut them down as a Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
And so I don't remember the number, but it was something like they had, swindled $60-70 million from the American public. And so yeah, that was the final straw for me in the Wire Dog.
But you did build a successful company.
Oh, absolutely.
After, with the different.
It wasn't after this. It was later on.
Yeah.
And that's part of these, it's tough to hear that, right? About, wow. I mean, I was waiting for the American dream story here, man, so we could high five, pat Scott on the back, right? And again, I think those stories are important. And I know I love to go watch a movie about, the the guy, the lady that came from nothing and make it. I love that, right?
Yeah.
But what I learned in my life, and I'll come back to this, is that crossing the finish line is not the victory. The end of the movie where everybody's happy and high-fiving, that's not the story.
Mm-hmm.
The story was everything leading up to that point. It was what they went through. That's where the gifts are. One of the chapters in my book is literally titled "The Gifts Are in the Pain." How counterintuitive is that? So all of those shortcomings, disappointments, the loss, the being stolen from, all of that stuff in college gave me, Lori, enormous gifts that I was able to carry forward in business that I otherwise wouldn't have. So I really needed all that failure to mature.
Absolutely. What did you learn that you were able to apply as a leader when you had the opportunity to become one?
Yeah, one of the top things I learned is it's okay to listen to everybody, but there's no requirement to take any action whatsoever. And it goes back to a point you made earlier, right? About surrounding yourself with people who are doing something like-minded. Well, I was surrounded by people that were doing none of this and had, whether it was through just nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking advice from people that have never done anything like this and believing it to be true.
Right. There's the saying about taking advice from people who have never done it, or like taking advice from people who aren't in the arena. There's something.
I don't know what it is, but what you're talking about. And there's another thing about taking advice from other people and acting on it. I didn't know this at the time. One of the reasons why I think two things that people love to give advice, right? One is because they have no risk whatsoever in their decision. They're willing to tell you anything because they have no risk of sending you off into a ditch. What do they care? And it's not that they're doing it intentionally. They actually think they're helping.
Yeah.
Number two, the advice that is given, if you start examining it, they would never give themselves that advice. Now, again, I didn't know any of this then. I thought these are some really smart people that care about me and we're in the same boat, rowing the same direction. No, sir. No. So anyway, I acted on it. And part of acting, on my fault, not theirs, right? But anyway, that was a huge lesson coming out of college that I carried forward all the way, literally up until today. That's a big one. Second big lesson.
Yeah.
I left the military and people ask me, what was the number one thing you got from the military? And I always tell them it's 3 words: make it happen. The military empowered you, if you were with the right leadership, to make it happen. They loved to make it happen. Sergeant Lackey, I need you to go take that hill. Consider it done, right? Go accomplish this mission. Consider it done. Make it happen. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. But when you get to college and you're in civilian world, you can't speak to your fellow civilians like make it happen. Their head will spin 3 times, right? And I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when I would get excuses about why things can't be done. And I would look at you and I would like, you're the problem then. That doesn't go over well.
No, I've heard that. Yeah. This ties into something that I had written down when we talked the first time that I wanted to cover with you. And that was, it's tangentially related, but it was about breaking promises to yourself. And so you're asking people to do things that maybe they can't do, but let's turn it around and talk about asking yourself to do things and then not following through on those promises that you've made to yourself.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Lori, because this is critically important even to the content of my book, right? I think it's fair to say that we all focus way too much on outward things that influence us and not where the most important influence is, which is what is within us. Okay? So when I look at this period of time we're talking about, and even recently, I can tell you a story about my wife making a comment about broken promises, which was a stinger. Okay.
Okay.
But when even looking at this period of time, when I look back of what were the core issues that happened on why the wire dog didn't move forward, and if I take absolute, honest, transparent evaluation of that, I broke a lot of promises to myself. Forget about where people led me, recommendations. I took responsibility for that because I listened and I acted. All right. How that changed moving forward Again, I write about this in the book. What I changed moving forward is that, and this is a skill I've really developed now, is I can listen to pretty much anything. I can listen to arguments, debates, why this is a horrific mistake in my life, why I should never do things, and almost have zero point zero emotion about what's coming out of your mouth. Okay. And evaluate it for what it is, and then make my own personal decision if it serves me or it doesn't serve me. Right. And so that's a huge thing about, avoiding broken promises. And let me just add one last thing to all the listeners. One of the reasons you don't trust yourself right now is because of all the broken promises you've made to yourself.
What was the thing we talked to? So you've completed an Ironman, at least one, right? How many?
One full Ironman, 140.6 miles, and several of the half Ironmans.
Okay. Not that completing one is, not a giant feat in and of itself. I just wasn't sure if I was remembering correctly that you had done more than one. All right. But you started that endeavor because you wanted to keep a promise to yourself, right?
I did. Yeah. It was actually during COVID. And I remember, and you may remember, there was a time period where every year it was a big broadcast on Saturdays. I think it was Saturdays when the Ironman race in Kona, Hawaii was, right. And it was broadcast every year, the World Championship, and I saw that, and I'll never forget the feeling. I can still feel it. I still love the idea of going to Kona and racing, right? On the big island. And, but I never did. I did shorter races. They're called sprints and Olympic distance races. And I just always wanted to do that. And so during COVID, for no a reason I can't explain now, everything was great. Taking lunch walks with my wife and getting to know my neighbors better. Everything was fine. Mm-hmm. Kids were great.
It was fine.
Fine. These little voices, this little voice showed up in my head, and the voice basically said, "Hey man, you're not where you're supposed to be." And I could not shake that thought. And it was like a slow burn, and it just began to permeate. And I couldn't, I was laying in bed at night, sleeping about what does it mean? And then you just get tied in these knots, and ultimately again, just wrestling with that, looking inward again, not running, right? There would have been a time in my life I would have run from that. But now when that stuff happens, I turn and look at it. I say, okay, well, let's have a discussion. Let's figure this out, because I'm tired of feeling this way. And that was the word that came to me. It's broken promises, Scott. The reason you feel this way, and the reason I'm telling you you're not where you're supposed to be, is because broken promises. Oh yeah, what broken promises? And then I started going through my brain. Oh, you remember that Ironman race you were going to do? Yeah. How long has that been sitting out there? Oh, remember you were going to do this? Yeah. How long has that been? Oh, remember that book you were going to write, Scott? Yeah. Just this laundry list of stuff that I told myself, I promised myself that was important to me that I was going to do. And I didn't do any of them. And so I made the decision of all of those broken promises. The one that was most important to me was to do the Ironman finally. And I didn't tell anybody I made that decision.
That's right. That's right.
Remember that story?
Yeah.
And people ask, why didn't you tell them? Because you wanted it to be a secret? You wanted to surprise them? Well, I wish that were true. The truth was, I was afraid I was going to break my promise, and I didn't want anybody to know about it. I didn't trust myself. Now, after about 6 weeks of training, my kids, first of all, in my family, they never questioned me doing triathlon workouts because I'd done it before. And they just took it as Dad's going to do another triathlon. But this was different because Dad was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Dad was running in the rain. Dad was running in the heat. Dad was running in the wind. Dad was swimming in the dark. He didn't care, right? And then one night, on a Friday night, I think it was, at a dinner table, they were all shifty, and I knew something was going wrong. They had a little meeting before Dad got to the dinner table.
An intervention.
An inner freak invention. They wanted to know what is going on. And so they asked me, and I'm smiling, and my wife's like, "What are you smiling about? This is serious." So I know it's serious. I said, "I'm going to tell you what's going on. I signed up for an Ironman." Silence. What's an Ironman? And I told them, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 marathon in one day, all at one time. You're crazy. You've lost your mind. But boy, then the chatter started, And but again, they obviously they ended up supporting it, but there was a reluctance there. But that's it was broken promises. You know what I mean? And I can tell you, from that point of doing the Ironman up until you and I speaking today, the internal alignment and internal professional growth rate, it's not vertical, but it is on a high rate of climb of self improvement.
You seem to have had an awareness, a connection to whatever you want to call it, a higher power, something that told you, one, all the way back to the army thing, like you need to join the army. This is the thing for you. Like you said you had this knowing inside you. And then the other examples you've given of having that um hearing the messages, I guess is the best way to say that. And what are the tools that you use to help keep you connected?
Yeah. So for me, again, just to be transparent, when I talk about I felt this presence or this voice, for me, I'm referring to God, right? And I know a lot of people have different beliefs about a lot of different things, but I feel very strongly about my faith and how in my early life, I just knew a name because I grew up in the South, but I didn't have a relationship, and I didn't know what that meant. But I also tell people that in my life, this is, I think, something that I think is beautiful about my life is that when I reach the end, more than one place in a dark spot, there is no more rope to hang on to. When I had nothing else left, he was already waiting on me when I got there. Now, I didn't want to admit it, right? And for a long time, I didn't want to admit it, right? Because admitting it requires a whole nother set of decisions I wasn't ready for.
Sure. Sure.
And so that's foundationally this journey that I went on of discovery for myself of where are these thoughts coming from? So that's looking backwards. That's part of one of the struggles was, going through that. Just to answer that question.
Well, I'm looking for even a little bit more because how do you get yourself to the place to be able to hear that voice?
Yeah, great point. So there's numerous things that I do. One of them, these are not in any order, but I journal, and right. And when I journal, of course, I didn't in the beginning. I was almost embarrassed to journal in the beginning. I didn't want anybody to know I journaled, and which is interesting. This process you go through of telling the truth, right? But journaling is a very powerful tool, especially if you're consistent with it. Meditating, being quiet, being still. There's actually a plaque in our kitchen. It's above the pantry, and I haven't noticed it in years. I noticed it the other day, and I forgot what verse it is, but it says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at that the other day, and I was just reflecting on me being still because I like being still sometimes, and just again not thinking about anything, right? And it's amazing. I feel like when you meditate, especially for extended periods of time, what comes up. Other things I've done is fasted.
Okay.
The longest fast I did was 72 hours, well, a little bit over 72 hours. I write about that in the book, about that experience and why I did it.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't even intended to be 72 hours. It was going to be 24. I just want to do 24. And there were some things that happened. I was like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We'll go another 24. And so that's another thing I do. Working out on short workouts, I don't seem to think about much of anything other than my breathing, and I can't wait for this to be over.
Right.
But on the really long workouts, it's interesting is that when I'm on and I haven't done this recently, but when I'm on a 70 or 80 mile or 100-mile bike ride, and then I know I've got to run after that, I mean, there's a place your human spirit goes when fatigue sets in, and it only comes from fatigue. So all of those things and some others, I could keep going on. They're just different things that I do, and not any one of them. I don't go to any one of them for connection. It's just the plurality of them where I have a connection, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very helpful for just to hear what works for you. And again, like I always talk about, and I'm sure you've mentioned it, you have to find what works for you because it's not the same for everybody.
It's not. And another hard lesson, right, is that you and I, let's say we knew each other, and let's say we were best friends, okay? Just because we're best friends and we may be walking on the same path together, your journey is your journey and mine's mine. We had different destinations. So we may be running parallel paths, but you're going somewhere different than I am. And we often confuse that the people who are with us are going the same place we are, and it's not true.
This has been such an interesting conversation and very key takeaway rich. So,
Well,
before
I
we
appreciate
go
it.
though, and I think you told me that you like we just covered, like when you're doing a long workout, a lot of times you like to do it in silence so that you can get that give your brain the opportunity to check into whatever that higher power, to God. But is there a song that you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy?
You bet there is. It is from Eminem, "Till I Collapse."
Okay.
Yep.
That makes perfect sense for you.
I didn't really learn. I hadn't really revisited. How about I say this? I had not revisited this thought since I was in the military, and I didn't think of it the same way in the military, so I couldn't connect them. But in the military, whether you realize it or not, you're asked when you raise your right hand and swear an oath, you are putting your life on the line for whatever they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really think about it. You know it's there, but you're all in. You don't think you're going to get sent to the desert or wherever, right? And so you're answering a question that I didn't know I was answering then, which is, what are you willing to sacrifice? And fast forward to the Ironman. That was the very specific question that came to me early in my training, over and over and over again. Scott, what are you willing to sacrifice? And I would give it answers, right? TV, and time,
Yep.
and I would just have this laundry list of stuff, but it never satisfied the question. And then one day I was on a long run, and I go, oh my God, I know what the answer is that you're looking for. What I'm willing to sacrifice is myself, right? And so that was a beautiful thing to me, right? And I didn't mean like sacrifice myself that I'm going to have a heart attack, when I'm running the race. It wasn't what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Right. But there are things within us, all of us, that we were never meant to carry forward in life. And we have to let those things go. That's part of us. We have to sacrifice parts of ourselves in order to actually move forward in life.
Wow. That right there is a perfect place to end this conversation. That's so powerful. Scott, if somebody wants to continue this conversation with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
I would hope that they would go to my website, scottlackey.com, and contact me there. And I would equally hope they will go to Amazon and they will buy my book. And it is called Wake Up to Die Again.
Fantastic. I will put links to both of those places in the show notes, so make it very easy for people to find you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a Four-Letter Word. Thank
you, Lori, for the platform and your questions and getting to know you. You're a great person. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Hey, before we wrap, I want to leave you with a few things that really stuck with me from today's conversation with Scott. Number one, the gifts are in the pain. Every setback, every failure, every moment Scott thought he was losing, those were actually the things building him. As he puts it, crossing the finish line isn't the victory. Everything that built you to get there is. Number two, stop taking advice from people who have no skin in the game. If they've never done it, their opinion isn't data, it's noise. Number three, broken promises to yourself erode your self-trust. Every time you don't do what you said you were going to do, you chip away at your belief in yourself. Scott's Ironman was about keeping one big promise to himself, and that changed everything. Number four, when you grow, some people in your circle won't come with you, and that's okay. When Scott was pursuing his invention, a close friend told him to just shut up about it. Scott came to understand that his ambition was exposing that friend's own insecurities. Personal growth can unsettle the people around you. Recognizing that is part of the journey. And finally, number five, growth requires sacrifice, not of comfort or sleep or TV, but of the parts of yourself that were never meant to carry forward. That's what we explored today, and if any of this resonated, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Lori Saitz, and this is Fine is a 4-letter word. I'll see you next time.